We're here at Washington Irving Memorial Park and Arboretum. They've experienced quite a bit of damage from the ice storms this past winter. Mark Bays, the Oklahoma Urban Forestry Coordinator, is here to join me today and talk about some ways that we can manage ice damage. Well, Mark, we've certainly seen a lot more damage this year and in the past few years. Ice storms seem to be more frequent.
Yeah, it seems like since 2001 or so, we've really been seeing a lot of more frequency of these ice events coming in across the state. And it's unfortunate, but it seems like it's just going to be another thing for us in the tree industry and the horticulture industry that we're going to have to start thinking about just a little bit more, maybe more than we have in the past.
Okay, and in this park here in Bixby, you've been working with different people in the forestry department and creating ways to help manage some of this damage.
Yeah, they're really using technology much more today than we've done in the past to care for trees. And the city of Tulsa has done a wonderful job in doing inventories in a lot of their city parks where they're using GPS to go out and point sample every single tree in their parks. Bixby, that's what we're here with them doing, is we're helping them point sample all the trees that they have in Washington Urban Park here. And what it gives them is it gives them a really useful tool to prepare for these future storms that might happen. Granted, we're coming in this time after the event, but we're visiting every single tree in all their city parks. We're doing a GPS point sampling on that. And then what we're doing is we're assessing whether or not that tree will be able to survive this ice storm. We're assessing whether or not that tree just needs maintenance issues, or if that tree just weathered just fine. And so it's really helpful for communities to help prepare for future events to do this kind of stuff locally.
Okay, and how can smaller communities get some resources or help to do this?
Well, the city of Tulsa, they were very visionary a number of years back, and they participated in one of our urban forestry grant programs to do this. And so in the Department of Agriculture, we have a grant program available to communities to take care of trees on public lands. We provided some funds to them. They hired intern students from the forestry department, actually up in Stillwater, to come out and do all their parks. And so before the storm came in, they already had this information available. But it was through a grant program with the Department of Agriculture. Some of the smaller towns with maybe don't have the resources to put in for different grants, and some of the smaller places, we're committed to help those communities as well in the Department of Agriculture. So we're there to help provide that to some of the smaller towns. Now, could we have come in and helped Tulsa? Oh, no way, because they have thousands and thousands of acres of parks. They have, I think, 130 different parks. So that's why it was great that they were able to utilize our grant program to help them do that.
Okay. And when you're going through this inventory process, what sort of characteristics are they?
Well, they're documenting the tree species, they're documenting the size of the tree, and the current condition of the tree, or the current health of the tree. And that's really important to do, because in order to set up a management plan to help care for those trees, you need to have all those different things in place before you can do that.
Okay.
And what they have found in Tulsa essentially is some of those trees that were declining in health, those are the ones that were really failed first in the storm. And that's kind of what we're seeing across the state. Where the storm came through, the tree may have had an outward appearance of being healthy because it had leaves on it, but when the ice load came on those branches, it came crashing down. It exposed some pre-existing problems.
Okay, and I see your crews have been very busy here today assessing the damage. Now, homeowners are also faced with a lot of these same problems. What can they do? What's the first step in managing this ice damage?
Yeah, this has just been a hard couple of months for us, and I'm facing the very same thing, because I was without electricity for a week at my house, and I had a lot of my large trees around my house come crashing down too. And the first thing I have to ask myself is, number one, will my tree survive? And that's the questions that we've been getting time and time again, and people are just so concerned about losing such a dominant part of their landscape. And so the first question they need to ask is, will my tree survive? And there's a lot of things that you can look for, and there's a lot of things going on right now in this park actually that we're going through and helping them assess that I think that the homeowner could benefit from as well. Looking at how much the ice storm caused to fall out of the tree, and when is too much? When should that tree come out? Just a few questions like that that you need to be asking yourself.
Okay, well, why don't we take a look at a few of those trees and demonstrate how to make that assessment.
Okay, great.
Now with some of the trees here, it's pretty obvious that they need to come out.
Yeah.
We have one back here that's just completely topped.
It's really sad to see all through this park, especially some of these like back here, they've just lost so much of the top part of the tree that it's really obvious. Hopefully it's obvious that those kinds of trees need to come out. And it's a hard decision for homeowners to make, and a lot of the people in this park are having to make those decisions too. There's all other kinds of damage that we've seen when this ice storm. Major limbs have just come stripped off the tree completely down here, just exposing so much of the heartwood of that tree that decay is going to be rapidly moving into that tree.
Just too big of a wound to heal.
It's just this way too big, and too much of the crown of the tree has been removed. That coupled with where that branch has broke off and stripped off, it's just a bad place.
Okay, and another type of damage that we've seen just from the heavy ice loads on the top of the trees are some of them that just toppled over completely.
Yeah, like all the different sizes of trees. It's just amazing because it was moist and the ice just formed on top of the tree, and it maybe didn't break, but it fell over because of the weight, and you can kind of see that here on this particular tree. This is a quite large tree, and they just fell over like that, exposing the root systems. And what's unfortunate is on this size tree, this one should come out because there's no way to get it set up just right.
Okay, but on some smaller trees that might have fallen over in the landscape, there's possibility of saving those. Is that true?
Yeah.
Perhaps we have a smaller tree back here.
Hey, an Oklahoma redbud was spared. I mean, this is great. Look at that. That tree fell all the way around that and did not hurt it at all. But yeah, so in that case, if this tree happened to fall over some of these smaller ones, especially a tree that was recently planted, so if you planted it last fall and the ice caused it to fall over, you could go ahead and pull it back up, dig the soil around and get the soil or the roots back underground, pack the soil in that way, and then stake it. You'd want to make sure that you use the webbing material. A lot of we're staking trees much differently today than years ago, but so use the wide webbing material so you don't cut into the bark. Wire is not a good thing, and even if you string wire through a hose, that's still not good because that wire still creates a pressure point underneath that hose
Such
too.
A narrow
So
pressure
yeah,
point.
so just a wide band to kind of hold it up for just a year or so to allow those roots to reestablish themselves. So there's some hope, especially on some of the smaller trees.
Okay, now some of the trees that were damaged by the ice are not quite so obvious whether or not they can be saved.
Yeah.
Here's a good example. What would you do with this tree?
Well, this is this is one of those trees that are in question, and that's where we try and answer these questions on our website. We have a series of publications available for people. They could go and download on our website, and it asks questions, the question of will my tree survive or not, and then we detail just, is that tree going to survive? Should that tree come out? Or if it's one of those borderline trees, well, maybe you should give it the benefit of the doubt. And I'm one to think that maybe we should give those borderline trees the benefit of the doubt. But just an overall rule of thumb is whenever you remove, or whenever half of the crown is gone, that tree should be considered for removal. Now, that being said, if a homeowner wants to, if they have their favorite tree, or if it's the only tree on their lot, and they've lost half of the top of the tree, I'm one to think that if that was a healthy tree going into this ice storm, and if that owner is committed to a long-term recovery plan for that tree, I would say give that one a benefit of the doubt for a number of years. There are some problems, when you lose half of the leaves, you lose half of the food production for that tree. So health-wise, you've created an imbalance between the root system and the top part of the tree. So it's going to take a couple years for that to balance out. That tree, it may never survive because it's lost half of its food production by losing half of the leaves, but it's not a threat yet. It's not hazardous yet. Things like hanging branches, in trees, large cavities in trees, those are hazards that need to be removed immediately. But if that was a healthy tree going into the storm, it's still going to, have that structural integrity in place, and so it won't fail, it won't fall over, and it won't have a lot of decay. Now that may happen in a couple of years, and you would want to watch that over, but they may not be necessary to remove all of those this year that have 50% of the crown gone.
Okay, well let's take a look at a couple more trees and kind of go through the assessment process.
Okay.
Here's a good example of a tree that has about 50% damage.
Yeah.
How would you go through that process of assessing this?
Yeah, this is an ash tree, and this is one of those borderline trees that we talked about. The tree that we just looked at obviously had one of those hazards, one of those threats in place, so that would need to be dealt with immediately. But on this particular case, you can kind of get a look at it and see that the damage that the ice storm caused is about half of the overall canopy or the leaf area on this tree. You can kind of see some places in there where this tree had some problems before the ice storm. They were minor problems. Looks like there's some decay going on in there,
Yeah.
but it actually worked out because the decay is on the side of the branch that failed.
Yeah.
And so what we have seen a lot of cases is that this ice storm exposed pre-existing problems. So it could be the fact that since there was a little bit of decay on that side of the tree, that's probably the reason why some of those branches came down.
Okay.
But in this particular case, I think that looking at the rest of the shape of the tree, this would be one that we would consider thinning out and removing that half of that hazard. This whole side, just completely remove that, and then watch to see what happens. I've kind of talked about this, and the way I relate to it is through a surgery that I've had on my knee a number of years ago. I had knee surgery, and when I talked to my doctor about how what my hope for the future would be, he asked me what that was, and I said, well, I want a full recovery. I want to get out there and just be on with myself. And he said, okay, what I'm going to do is going to be the easy part. I'm going to do the surgery this year. I'm going to make everything function correctly, but you're going to have to be committed to coming back with a therapy part and continually revisit that knee to build its strength. And I think that's what people are going to have to do with this ice storm is yes, that's a 50% tree. Yes, they can do the surgery on it this year, but they're going to have to revisit it in the future years to make sure that it's going to be healthy as the years progress.
Okay. Well, let's look at some damage on some smaller trees.
Let's do that.
Well, this is a really unique specimen. It's a lacebark pine. We don't see these too much. And it seems to have lost its central leader here.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of that with the pines, and pines naturally have the real central leader that grows up, and when the top snaps out of theirs, the question is that going to ever recover and send up a new leader to kind of replace the one that was lost, is one of the questions. In this particular case, I would be willing, since it is such a unique tree, give it the benefit of the doubt. And if you look at where the break occurred, there's another lateral branch that's pretty close to about half the diameter of what was left. And that's kind of the rule of thumb that you need to think about. If there's a lateral branch that's half the diameter of the main stem, you may be able to train that into becoming the new dominant leader and replace the one that was lost. Now, is it going to happen? Only time will tell. But it's such a unique tree that I say give it the benefit of the doubt. And well, the other thing, like, it's now a shrub.
Yeah, this one keeps the lower branches and looks nice and full.
And it might not be bad. And so that's where, if this was a pine tree in your front yard, those are the kind of decisions that you're going to have to be making. It's no longer a beautiful specimen pine tree that's going to grow. It may recover, but it might be now a pine shrub. And particularly with the lower branches like that, I think that there's some real benefit to that.
We have another tree here that's just lost the main growing tip. The top is kind of bent over. This you could probably clean up with some pretty minor pruning.
Yeah, and this is a pin oak, and pin oaks are one of those species that have that real central leader like that. And yeah, this is hopefully obvious to people that this one does not need to be removed. Just remove that where it's connected right there down to the next lateral branch and watch it to see, hopefully that top will go ahead and replace the one that's been lost. So minor damage like this, that's what we're hoping that people will do, is just prune it.
Okay, well let's look at some proper pruning techniques. get people on the right track here.
Sounds a good idea.
Now, once you make the decision to keep a tree and prune it, there's some proper pruning techniques that we need to follow.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of trees damaged by the ice storm that are getting equally damaged by the pruning practices that have been coming back afterwards. And so we're trying to get people to do what we call target pruning. There's some key locations on each branch that you need to look at and target where that cut is being made to minimize the threats of future problems coming into the tree, because whenever you improperly prune a tree, you're going to open it up for decay, insects to move in, and those kinds of things. So it doesn't make sense if you're trying to keep that tree in place to do improper pruning. So I think we should just demonstrate some ways to do that.
And we can use this fallen limb to point out some of those, where are some of those key targets?
Yeah, the main thing to really looking for on all branches, regardless of size, what you have is right along here where that branch comes in contact with the next lateral branch. You have what's called the branch bark ridge, and that's just the place on the trunk where the bark from the main stem comes in contact with the lateral branch. So that's the first thing that you look for. The second thing you look for is just beyond the branch bark ridge, you have this swelling tissue here, and that's called the branch collar. And so when you make your cut, you're targeting just outside that branch collar in order to make your cut. You never ever want to cut into the branch bark ridge, because then it becomes more of a flush cut. You have a larger cut on that, and you're going to open up the main trunk of that tree to problems moving into it. Nature has been sealing wounds from trees since the beginning of time, and the place where this tree knows to start that sealing process is when that branch is lost just outside that branch collar there. So if I was to be pruning this branch here, you can see this line here, kind of right down in through here, where that swelling is now becomes symmetrical, and you move this up to the trunk of the tree and you see that it's somewhat the same diameter. So that's the angle that you make the cut right there. There's no set angle, and every different branch needs to be looked at differently. And but just take that extra time that it takes to look for that target on that branch, move through there, make that cut, and then that branch will seal over and prevent problems from getting in there. And I'm being very careful, as I always do, to try and say seal and not heal, because whenever you make a cut on that branch, it's going to be open to problems moving into it.
Right.
If you target prune where you need to, just outside the branch collar, that will seal over nicely, and the threat is going to be minimized moving into that tree.
Okay. Now with smaller branches, you could go ahead and just prune them right off, but with heavier limbs, we need to use the 3-cut method.
Yeah.
Can you go ahead and talk about that?
Sure. Whenever you cut a small branch, say an inch or so in diameter, it's possible just to make that cut. On a larger branch, what happens is if you don't use that 3-cut technique, let's just say that this is like just a tree here, and we're cutting this branch off right here. What happens is if you were just to come in on the top part here and make that cut, if that was a heavy branch, it would just kind of come back and peel off just like that. And so if you can imagine this peeling off on a small branch like this, think of what would happen. And we saw a lot of that damage in here where the trunks have just peeled back. So you want to prevent that, because that's a large wound on the main part of the tree now. So there's a 3-cut technique that you would do to minimize that threat from happening. And what you would want to do is you would find a place, if this was the place on the branch, you would just find a place outside the branch here to reduce that load out here, and you would come in underneath and come in and do what's called an undercut first. And you come in about 1/4 of the way underneath the branch and just make an undercut there. Once you make that undercut, you come on just the outside of that and come in with an overcut to cut down all the way through that to where that will snap off and not cause that stripping to peel back down the main trunk of the tree. The 3rd cut that you make on it, you would be coming back right here just outside where the branch bark ridge, the branch collar is, and making that cut right in here, you know, to clean and finish that cut off. So we're going to go ahead and do that right now. There, see, now that fell, it stripped just a little bit, but not too much, but that's good because it didn't come back into the main trunk of the tree. So that's good. Now, since there's no weight here, we can go back here, make this cut right along here for that third cut to get it just outside the branch collar. Right. Okay, so there we have, that's our third cut that we've come through. Have not cut into the branch bark ridge. We're just outside the branch collar. It has a little bit of swelling there, so now this should seal over very nicely, and that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to get this tree to seal over after you make that cut.
Okay, and one of the things I just wanted to reiterate is that we always want to make our cuts at where two branches come together, never top the tree.
That's right. Target pruning to just outside the branch collar. You never want to top it and do an internode cutting like that, because then you're going to open that tree to more disease problems and insect problems fighting into that. So target pruning to the next lateral branch.
Okay. And what types of equipment are we going to be using?
Well, for the homeowner, I would suggest just hand tools, and we used a bow saw today. There's a number of saws out there, hand tools, loppers. Be careful with safety. I probably should have gloves on, I don't, but wear gloves and protective gear like that to protect you from chips flying up from that.
Some eye protection.
Eye protection, right.
Okay. Now, we've created a bit of wood that we have to do something with, and as you look around, there's plenty of wood. What can we do with that?
Well, we're encouraging people to reuse that, recycle it, put it into a compost pile, use it for mulch, chip it up, use it for mulch. If you, there are a number of them rental, you could go out and rent them. If you don't have enough, share with your neighbor, get your community together, but chip it up, use it around your shrubs and around your trees. The city of Tulsa and some of those communities they have a real active recycling program, and that's what they're doing a lot with their chips, is offering them back to the community.
Well, that's really great.
It's great.
Now, obviously, lower branches you can prune yourself, but a lot of the damage we see is up in the crown. How do you go about hiring an arborist to do that work?
Have to be really careful, because people can come in and ruin your trees pretty quickly. Okay. We have a information available that's called How to Hire an Arborist, and you can go to our website, and it's a downloadable bulletin, and it gives you all sorts of things to ask those people. The one thing that we really suggest you do is make sure they have insurance, make sure that they prove to you that they have insurance. Call the insurance company, make sure that insurance is valid. Another thing to consider is some communities have licensing requirements, so call your city to see if there's a licensing requirement at the local level to see if they have to be licensed in your community to do work.
Okay, well, before we leave, there's one more tree that we want to take a visit.
It's a real nice tree. Okay, here we are. This is the state champion black walnut tree that's just right next to the Washington Irving Park that we were just at. And as you can see, this has survived the ice storm just wonderfully. And this to me gives us hope, because this tree has been around for hundreds and hundreds of years here and has been surviving these kinds of events, for a long time. And so I know that the trees that we have that have maybe been stressed out a little bit because of this ice storm, they're going to be around for quite some time, and we should get beyond this.
Okay, and there's more information about the champion trees on your website?
Yeah, you could go on our website, again, to find out more information about the Champion Tree Program, or again, to find out, we have a page specifically designed to help people answer those difficult questions when it comes to helping your trees recover from this ice storm.
Well, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks a lot.